Welcome to the African News Review podcast, where we cut through the noise and get to the truth. I am your host, Adesoji Iginla, and each week we are here to challenge the biases, prejudices, and misinformation in the Western press about Africa. Using historical context and contemporary insights, we set the record straight and reclaim the narrative. Tune in every Sunday at 12 p.m. Eastern as we uncover the real stories and reshape the conversations about Africa. This is the African News Review podcast, reclaiming Africa's narrative, one story at a time. Yes, it is greetings and welcome to another episode of African News Review, the podcast that reframes the African narratives from an African perspective based on articles in the Western media. Here we do no colonial lens. We give you our take on those news stories according to context in history. I'm your host, Adesoji Iginla. With me, as usual, I have Fubara Eneli Esquire, author, Your Self-Revolution, and Kwanzaa A Celebration Guide. Welcome, sister.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, the comrade is Comrade Milton Allimadi. He is author, Manufacturing Hate, and he's host of Black Star News on WBAI 99.5 FM New York.
Thank you.
Yeah. Welcome, both of you. So, as is customary here, we do news where you're at. So, starting with sister, what's the news that you think the world should know with regards to where you're situated?
The world is on fire. Literally, it feels that way. It's one thing after the other just in terms of the assault on our rights. So, this past week, Fifth Circuit Court affirmed, the lower court had stayed a law that Texas had passed, basically allowing the state apparatus to stop people that they thought had illegally crossed the border and to arrest them and to even start deportation procedures against them. And there was a lawsuit brought because that is typically the purview of the federal government, not the state apparatus. Well, the lower court stayed that
judgment.
That bill initially saying, hey, no, it can't go any further for now. Well, the Fifth Circuit came back and said, no, we can go ahead. And one of the concurring opinions was written by James Ho, who is an immigrant from Taiwan, naturalized as a U.S. citizen at age 9, is a member of the Federalist Society, who cited a book stating that Mexico and other countries are weaponizing immigration against the United States. Therefore, the state of Texas has the right to fight back. And so fighting immigration should no longer just be the purview of the federal government. And so we continue to see these attacks, whether it's the redistricting, which of course the area that I live in was redistricted, racially gerrymandered before this 2025 redistricting that they started. We were redistricted before, and there's still Black people who are supporting the white elected official. I'll name him if I can even pull his name out of my head right now. Gosh, Buckley. That's how much I can't stand him. But there's still Black people supporting him because we're just not even paying attention and connecting the dots. This man has voted against women's rights. He's voted against our history being taught in schools. He's voted to racially gerrymander our area, and there's still Black people supporting him. So the attacks are coming left, right, and center. We do have a couple of runoff elections coming up in the city of Harker Heights, and we have an African-American woman veteran who is in the runoff for mayor, Linda Nash, hoping that our people will go out and support her, not just because she's a veteran or because she's African-American or because she's female, but because she actually has the goods to deliver for all people and not just some people. But we'll see what happens. We fight on. Of course, yesterday we had the All Roads Lead to the South, which LaTosha Brown and many other civil rights leaders were in Selma, and we are definitely going to take this fight to them, and when we fight, we win.
Thank you. So, brother?
Yes, so, one of the good things with, this president is that sometimes in his unsophisticatedness, he reveals some truth. So in his visit to China, he's definitely revealed that China is a co-global power now. See? Before he went, remember months ago, he was tearing down China, talking about the 150% tariff and all that. Now he's coming back. He's saying Xi is his friend. They could work together very well. And they asked him, they said, one reporter asked him, what about the planned sale of weapons to Taiwan? Because the U.S. has planned multi-billion-dollar sale of weapons. He said, I have to talk with the leader of Taiwan. That was his response. So anybody else, not him, would couch it in such a way that you would not understand what is being said. But obviously, he's making it clear that Taiwan is not going to get any weapons, not after this visit anyway. You see? You're right. So people that understand the relationship between China and the United States can really analyze and see the impact of this visit. I mean, obviously, China is the biggest winner from this visit. So to me, that is the interesting development this week.
Okay. So
could I add something to that visit?
Sure.
Something very, very little that is not even political, but just shows the complete stupidity of not just Donald Trump, but all of you still supporting him. This man on a tour is marveling at, wait a second, how old are those trees? And they were like, those trees are between 200 and 300 years. Wow. First of all, of course, in a sense, those trees are older than your so-called republic. But on the other hand, understand that this idiot of a felon tore down, uprooted trees as old as that surrounding the White House because he has no respect for anything. This is the idiot you people elected and continue to prop up. And now he has his golden statues that you're all worshiping as though you have chosen to not read that part of the Bible as to what happens to the people who worship the golden calf.
Yes.
Not stand it.
It
is not about Trump.
But he got roses.
Trump did not get there by himself. You guys put him there, and you guys are maintaining him there.
He got roses, though. Yeah, he gave him roses, and he was very happy about that. And he also.
You mean the roses his wife uprooted from the rose garden as well?
And then he also asked. So this garden, every leader that comes to visit China.
Yeah, that's what I was about to ask.
Are they showing around? And she said, rarely, very few.
Rarely, even Putin.
I said Putin is going to next week when it comes.
Yes,
So Trump felt very special as a result. And that's why Taiwan is not going to get any weapons, guaranteed.
He said, look, America is doing so well. They're wearing blue jeans in China. Idiots! The blue jeans have made it. Okay, I know we've got real news to cover, but my God, level idiocy is.
Okay,
if someone had made a movie, you would say, come on now, you can't suspend all reality. But that's what we're living in.
The closest that comes is that movie Being There with Peter Sellers, Being There. Chauncey Gardner, the guy who used to talk nonsense, and people thought it must be very sophisticated what he's saying. If you haven't seen that movie, you must see it. So he became a presidential advisor.
In the UK, we might have a new prime minister shortly because the government of, what's his name? I even forgotten his name now.
Your prime minister.
Mr. Starmer.
Right.
Yeah, Mr. Starmer. Is cratering. There was a series of resignation in the course of the week, owing to his electoral defeat in in the local elections, where his his party hemorrhaged over 1,100 local seats, which were largely won by by the Greens. Then Reform, the party of Farage, also make inroads. So there's been the night of long knives, as they would say over here. We might witness a vote of no confidence in the course of the week. So that's to watch. And it stems from the Epstein fallout, his subsequent handling of other matters with regards to Iran, Israel, and a host of other contentious issues in the United Kingdom. But mostly to do with his lack of judgment when it came to the issue of Peter Mandelson being sent as ambassador to the United States. So,
which is pretty insane, because the people that gained are actually 10 times worse than him.
Yes. And to think that the people who actually are the center of the entire debacle are not even moved one iota to even, I think someone resigned in the course of the week, a cabinet member. I think it was, what's his name? Lotnick. I think Lotnick was thinking of resigning I'm not sure if he has pulled the lever yet.
You
But
mean Howard Lutnick
Howard
here in
Lutnick,
the
yeah.
U.S.? No,
Yeah.
no, he's
No.
not.
Okay.
No, he's
Yeah,
not.
back to me.
I thought he
I
was
do
going.
want to say that this isn't news where I am, but it's news that we should all be concerned about, and I want to thank Ms. King for bringing this up. The World Health Organization has officially declared the Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Uganda a public health emergency of international concern. This is the WHO's highest global alert level, short of declaring a pandemic, and the outbreak is centered primarily in the eastern Congo's Ituri province near the Ugandan border. And they're saying that the outbreak involves a strain, it's the Bondigo-Bugyo strain, which is much rarer than the Zaire strain. There are no approved vaccines for it. There are no approved targeted treatments for it. And the outbreak is occurring in conflict zones and mining regions with heavy population movements. So far they're saying more than 300 suspected cases, between 80 to 88 suspected deaths, cases confirmed in Eastern Congo, Uganda, and at least one case linked to Goma. So something for us to be aware of, pray about, and certainly if you're traveling, be careful about.
And to buttress that point, Ms. King said in the chat, people will die because of the inhumanity and ignorance of the current federal government in the United States.
Absolutely.
That is, yeah, especially them having pulled out of the World Health Organization. Resources that could help mitigate will not be available.
All the aid that has been canceled as well.
Yeah. There you go.
I blame those African governments more than anything else. You should not be beholden or dependent on Europeans. Europeans colonize you, enslave you, and now you're leaving your health, to them.
I agree wholeheartedly.
The young people in Africa, you're listening to us. My lesson and message is the same all the time. Get rid of governments that don't serve your interests.
I agree.
Speaking of serving interest, France was in Nairobi, and let that sink in for a moment. France has been expelled from the Sahel, has lost influence in Central Africa, now arrives in Nairobi with a 27 billion check. Is this a new partnership, or is this the oldest story in African history, dressed in a new language? For that story, we go to the BBC, and it's that the French president, Emmanuel Macron, was in Nairobi calling the minions to come in for a chat. The BBC says France seeks to move beyond colonial ties by meeting African leaders in Kenya. And there he is with one of the African elites, William Ruto, the president of Kenya, accused of neocolonial meddling in many African countries where it has traditionally had close ties. France is broadening its horizon by hosting a summit of African leaders in English-speaking Kenya for the first time. Speaking at the African Forward Summit in the capital, Nairobi, on Tuesday, French President Emmanuel Macron repeatedly spoke of co-investment, equal footing partnership, as he described shared challenges including security, economic dependence, and geopolitical competition. You've read the story? What is your take, comrade?
Brother Adesoji, there's an echo. I don't know if I'm the only one that hear it. I don't know if the sister can hear it. Everything you said is being repeated.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Just taking a quick break here on the African News Review podcast. But don't go anywhere. If you're enjoying our deep dive into the real stories behind the headlines, make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Every Sunday at 12 p.m. Eastern, we're here to debunk the myths and bring you the truth about Africa. Want to help spread the word? Share this podcast with your friends and leave us a review. It goes a long way in helping others discover the real Africa. Without further ado, let's get back to setting the record straight. It's probably only at your end. Go on.
You may have two tabs open.
Do you have two tabs open? If you want to go back out and come back in. Okay. So, I think it's on. Someone is saying in the chat that there is no echo. So it must have been on his end. So.
All right. So I'm back now. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you clearly. Yeah.
Say
Do
something.
you still have an echo?
Yeah, unfortunately, I can still hear it, but fine, I can hear you. So if it's only on my end, let's continue then. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So go on.
So first of all, it's I go back to the analogy that Sister Aya likes to give, and it is like, how can you, the chicken and the fox, coexist or live in the same pen? It's preposterous that the chicken and the fox are co-sponsoring this summit, and it's supposed to be for mutual benefit. I think that's the best way to start off with this analogy. So sorry, sister, that I stole the analogy that you use all the time. On this occasion, there was nothing better than that. Number one. Number two, they talk about investment. The only investment that African countries need is the one that creates factories so that they can use their natural resources to produce manufactured products. There's no reason why they should continue to import automobiles, right? Let alone cheese. They said there's a French department store in Nairobi selling cheese and wine.
Flowers is gone. He will be back. So you want to proceed with the hen? I mean, I do have a different question for you with regards to this particular story, and it's to do with the equal footing. I think it's back.
I have a lot to say about this story.
I'm willing to bet there's not a Kenyan super.
Put the
Go ahead,
article
sister.
back up. I just want
market in
our
Paris
audience to look at
sending
that picture,
Kenya
that image. Because an image, as they say, is worth what? 1,000 words?
1,000 words, yeah.
Maybe 1 million, maybe 27 million, billion. Dear Ruto, my brother, I will still call you. What in the hell are you doing? You have been the lapdog for the United States, going into Haiti to do I don't know what, as though you did not study any history. And now that all of these, and I will not even insult them by using that term that they used to delineate who was colonized by what country did. Now that certain West African countries have kicked France out, you decide that you're going to make nice. You're looking into the eyes of a president of a country that just a few weeks ago ruled and said, yeah, enslaving you guys, enslaving your ancestors, not a big deal. We're just going to be non-committal on that. Do you need investment or do you need them to return all that they have stolen? So instead of you partnering with your brothers and sisters whom they were still pillaging and exploiting, you decide you're going to go along with this centuries-old divide and conquer. But it's not just William Ruto, because about 30 other African nations, including the leader of Nigeria, so many of them showed up.
Yeah.
All of you hat in hand. For what? This man can't even consolidate power in France. But he can come to Africa and all of you show up begging? And wait a second. How are they treating your people in France? What are all the anti-immigration bills in France? How are they? Are you freaking kidding me? Like when Frederick Douglass said they cannot ride your back if you're not bent. What are we doing, African so-called leaders? So African countries are supposed to bring 9 billion. They're going to bring 18 billion. What? Wait a second. You took 100 billion from me. You're going to give me, acts like you're giving me back 18 billion as a way to extract 100 billion more. Like the math isn't even mathing.
Yeah.
Do you think any of this is altruistic?
None at all. None at all. None at all.
And wait a second. This is not like it's news to us. Kwame Nkrumah has written about this.
Yeah. Neocolonialism, last stage of
Frantz
imperialism.
Fanon, Sankara, Azikiwe could have told you about this. Ibrahim Traore is telling you about this right now. Walter Rodney wrote a whole book about this decades ago. Like, it's right there in our faces. What are we doing? All right, let me stop.
You could go on, actually. The reason I said...
Look at that picture. Like we're friends. We're making eye contact. Like, I can trust you. Are you freaking kidding me?
I don't know what this picture was supposed to convey, but the dynamics.
You might need to watch The Karate Kid. You understand what you do as a snake charmer? They actually teach this in neuro-linguistic programming. You mirror the person's mannerisms, you mirror their breathing, you get eye control, all of that, and then you can control that person's thoughts and movements. This is real. I've taken those courses. What is Ruto doing? And why are so many of our leaders, have we not studied?
Well, somebody was probably looking out the window while the lesson was going on in the class.
It's the same thing as what James Ho has done, immigrant in the Texas. It's the same thing as what Clarence Thomas is doing. It's the same thing as, what's the idiot who was just not backed for Kentucky, who was okay with Breonna Taylor being killed? Cameron. I mean, what are you people drinking? What Kool-Aid are they giving you?
Is also the notion that, like you said, if 3 of your brothers have rejected this same person and you now think you are wiser than them, owing to their history, then obviously...
Not just 3 of your brothers. Look at all of those countries that used to be colonized by France. And look at the agreement where they had to deposit their reserves in France. You know what? Till today, we don't even have an accurate accounting because France never had to share their bookkeeping with them.
Yeah. It's considered one of the greatest stealing.
Sleeping with the enemy. What are we doing?
It's considered one of the greatest stealing in history. And for those who are not aware, following the Second World War and the move for independence, France, led by Charles de Gaulle at the time, put forward a motion for independence based on the referendum within the former colonial states. And the treaty itself, it's called the Treaty for the Continued Colonization. But obviously loose independence. You can have a flag, but everything about your country is controlled from Paris. Only one country in 1958 said no, and that was Guinea. Guinea's crime was not only saying no, but also losing all of its infrastructure, which was destroyed, its schools, its hospitals, roads were dug up. Yeah, the CFRANs is exactly the two. There is a book out there on the CFA called The Last Colonial Currency by Pigard and Silla. It's a very, very interesting read for people who might want to understand the French negative influence in 16 African countries at the time. I'm minded, I think the comrade is having technical issues. And so we'll go on to the next story. And that is coming from South Africa. And the story reads, Cyril Ramaphosa might be in trouble. And it's that the Constitutional Court has decided to revisit his issues of 2020. So the story comes from Deutsche Welle, the German outlet, and the headline reads, "Can South Africa's presidential Ramaphosa avoid impeachment?" Ramaphosa sidestepped an impeachment inquiry in 2022 when his ANC-dominated parliament blocked it. Now, the South African top court has revived the case. Can he escape with a parliament accommodating former adversaries? There he is. And South Africa President Cyril Ramaphosa is right back to where he is in late 2022 under renewed scrutiny over alleged wrongdoing, facing an impeachment process and mounting calls to step down. On Monday, he announced he will not resign, but he will challenge the impeachment proceedings against him. "I therefore respectfully want to make it clear, I will not resign," Ramaphosa said in a TV address. You've read the story, so what do you think?
Okay, hold me again. Scroll back up to his picture.
What is it with you on pictures? Yo.
Now, doesn't he look like Ruto's twin brother?
Come to think of it, it does, Yeah, it does. You're having too much fun at this.
Listen, I see things in a lot of different ways, but yeah, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
A little bit more meat on the face, but Okay, so I think that it would be helpful if you remind people about how this story began, because we covered this before.
Okay, so in 2020...
Tell us about the sofa.
Okay, so in 2022, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, president at the time, he did what you call an under-the-table deal, and he got paid $4 million. I don't mean 4 million African dollars, 4 million USD. And he subsequently obviously didn't declare it, but what can I say? The 4 million fell into his sofa. That's the best way to say it. Fell into his sofa, and when someone dipped their hand in the sofa and felt $4 million, his retort was he couldn't take it to the bank because the money came to him Friday after banking hours. Suffice to say, money was a deal that he made with certain people across the border in Namibia, and he didn't declare it. Some will argue.
What does 4 million in cash actually look like? Like, I don't even know if I can even. But anyway, carry on with the story.
So he subsequently was impeachment proceedings brought in the House of Parliament, in the South African Parliament, but it was voted down because at that time ANC had in its sofa, in its sofa, very huge sofa, not the kind of sofa you and I have, but huge. So because his party at the time had a huge majority in the Parliament, it was voted down. And now the story has resurfaced that the higher court is seeking to revisit the allegation, and the Constitutional Court has said they can't proceed with impeachment proceedings, to which he is now saying he's going to fight the proceedings. Your take on it, on the possible dubious nature?
Actually, this is very concerning. And looking at some of the other stories we covered in the past regarding his acceptance of Trump's ambassador appointee, and then who he appointed as South Africa's ambassador to the United States, it's beginning to make a little bit more sense.
Okay.
That this man is in a political fight for his life, if you will, or in a fight for his political life, I should say that.
Yeah.
And it has serious implications because the ANC is so fractured that there is no one clear leader that people will galvanize around.
Yeah.
Certainly the deputy president, perhaps, but there are many who will see that as continuing with the status quo, and there are many younger ANC members who are going to say, hey, we're ready for change. And so when you look at the fact that the ANC already lost their majority in the 2024 election, this becomes a very critical time. Will the Democratic Alliance, which is the apartheid group, basically, seize upon this weakness and become the ruling party in South Africa?
Yeah.
Or create their own alliance with organizations or parties such as the ATM, the African, what do they call them? The African Transformation Movement or something like that, which is a completely all-white group who actually filed this suit, if you will, with the Supreme Court. So there are a lot of issues at play here. Then when you also take into the consideration that EFF with Malema, that case is in court, which we've talked about, and we don't know through the appeal process how many years he's going to get and how that is going to impact EFF. You could be looking at South Africa going back to where, he embraced June. Yes, he embraced the Democratic Alliance as a way of keeping power, but they could now usurp that power.
Correct.
If they decide to vote to impeach him. So I think they need 2/3 votes to impeach.
They need 2/3 majority.
They need 50% for no confidence votes. And it's very dicey. It just depends on how he's able to play these cards. But in terms of the larger population of South Africa and what this means for our ongoing liberation movement, we could be seeing a big reversal in terms of some of the gains, all because we have had leaders who come into power, Black leaders who come into power, who unfortunately do not carry out the will of their their people, these African elites that we talk about. And before Comrade comes on, because I know he has a lot to say, I just want to point out, I talked about the physical similarities between Ruto and Ramaphosa. But I also want to just point something out when we're talking about these African elites. When you look at Ramaphosa, right?
Yeah.
How did he make a lot? He's a businessman.
Yeah.
He made a lot of his money through the Black economic empowerment deals.
Mm-hmm.
So they're policies that are put in place to benefit people at large. But then you have these elites who are carving out things for themselves, mining investments, corporate board memberships, banking, telecom partnerships, not to the benefit of his people, but just gathering for himself, right?
Yep.
So he transformed basically from a labor radical to a corporate statesman. Now let's look at Ruto, student Christian organizing. So Ramaphosa was labor organizing. Ruto was student Christian organizing. Automatically, your bell should be going off.
Yep.
Because anytime you got, an African leader who's already bought into a certain,
mindset,
religious ideology, he rose through Kenya's ruling party networks, patronage politics, and then populist campaigning. So he talks about, I'm a hustler, but he's tied to the political elite, land accumulation for himself, donor institutions, and then this whole issue of international capital. Both of them favor privatization. Both of them favor foreign investment, IMF, World Bank Corporation. And so you see Ruto going in with all these austerity measures that, by the way, while he is helping to appoint women into positions in his government, at the same time, his policies are hurting women the most because they're the ones who are mostly in that of trading and so on. He has weakened labor protections. He's deepened debt dependency, and he's prioritized investors over ordinary citizens. So when you look at these two people, their politics very much the same. On the one hand, the outsiders like them because they provide a certain amount of stability.
For the capital.
The people on the inside are hurt by them. And yet, if you take them out of power, it could create a whole lot of chaos that also the people.
They need to go.
They need to go. I agree with you. But please go ahead, comrade.
Well, no, but comrade, before you go, I want to preface what you're about to say with this. It's actually part question, part statement. So the South African Constitutional Court has done its job. Parliament is also doing its job. But for the millions of South Africans living without adequate housing, clean water, or consistent electricity, how does this drama play out to them when it's their very occupation of their roles as political officers have not changed their lives?
No, ironically, in a way, it's actually good because these are the kind of things you need to happen before you have authentic revolution. And that's what these countries need, all of these countries. So with me, I look at the structure of the system, not so much the individuals. I mean, of course, these guys are exceptional crooks, Ruto, Ramaphosa, but any other name in their position would probably be exceptional crooks as well. And I have no sympathy for Ramaphosa, of course. It's a guy who's betrayed the revolution. How do you have $4 million? Think about that in your home. And first of all, this story was very badly written too.
Yes.
You don't realize that they're referring to the $4 million in cash until the very end of the article.
Very much so. Very much so.
One of the worst edited articles I've ever seen from a major media network as well. So the people that stole the money were hoping that there's no way Ramaphosa is going to come publicly and admit that money was stolen from his farm. Because the public would then say, wait a minute, why did you have $4 million in your farm in the first place? But being how greedy he was, even though he knew he would be opening up Pandora's box, there was no way would he allow $4 million to just go like that. So he actually sent South Africa intelligence officers to Namibia to arrest the people who had stolen the money and bring them back. So it was an illegal operation, right?
Using the tools of state. Using the tools of state.
Absolutely. The tools of state over his private corrupt enterprise, you see? So now, and Sister is correct, he's in a dilemma because now, to continue as president, he may have to depend, he may not, even with the Democratic Alliance against him. There may not be sufficient for 2/3 if they decide to vote against him. But economic freedom fighters might also vote against him. Malema's party. And Zuma's party, definitely also. Zuma hates him, you see?
Yeah, with a passion.
So now it means that he really needs the Democratic Alliance. And the Democratic Alliance, if you think he controls him now, imagine to what extent would they be controlling him. So it's actually probably better that he be removed as president for the sake of South Africa. But here's another thing I want to say for both South Africa and Kenya. This political system is relatively maturing in these countries, right?
Yep.
They have a system that can actually remove a president like Ramaphosa, which is a good sign, partially. But they need to go beyond that because they're still operating in the typical bourgeois state, Whoever comes afterwards is not going to address the needs of the people, as Sister said, the population, the regular people. And then finally, I want to say this for our sister and brothers listening. Go listen to the interview on YouTube with Steve Biko. Just put Steve Biko interview and it will pop up. It's about 27 or 28 minutes. And this is something he said in 1977. And we are seeing it materialize today. He said, if we think ending apartheid is just a question of changing the color of the people running the system, then it's going to be as if yesterday is the same as today. And he's a complete 100% right. In South Africa, yesterday is the same as today. Now what they have is a neo-apartheid state. That's what they have.
Okay. Yeah. So audience, if you're finding value, please consider subscribing to the channel, like, share, subscribe, do all the good stuff. And there's no other place you will get this sort of analysis other than on African News Review. So that said, we're going to a question of geography. And it's that Togo, a couple of days ago, took its fight against, so Togo's, the story comes from Radio France International, and it's that Togo fights against centuries-old map revives debate over African representation. I asked the question, what's the big deal? Well, it's a plan by Togo to ask the United Nations General Assembly in September to move away from a Mercator world map has revived a broader debate over how different projections can shape perception of Africa. And it is that, what's the story? Faya Ndiaye, a co-founder and deputy executive director of advocacy organization Speak Up Africa, argues that distorting the true size of countries on map can quietly shape how people view who matters in the world. I think it is important to note that the maps are not neutral, she told RFI. Of the widely used Mercator map, she said, Greenland appears almost as large as Africa, when in reality, Africa is 14 times larger than Greenland. She went further. For Africa, Ndiaye said, being shown as smaller than a true size can send a damaging message about the continent's importance and even cause it to be sidelined in negotiation. The African Union published a decision during its federal summit backing the use of equal Earth map, despite the Mercator outline still appearing in its own logo. Talk about irony. So, sister, I'm sure you did geography in secondary school.
I think we covered this story a little while ago. Still on this issue of, okay. Kudos to Togo. Kudos to African nations. It looks like every UN meeting now, we are not just coming as spectators. We are coming with
maps.
Yes. And we're coming with
issues,
plans and demands and so on and so forth. So I give them kudos on that. Having said that, you don't need the UN to approve anything for you to do what you need to do yourselves. So let me tell you on a very basic level, something that I noticed. So we have a school that we are sponsoring in Opobo in Nigeria. We wanted to decorate some of the classrooms, particularly the kindergarten classrooms. So we're looking for those charts that have A as in, so on and so forth, right? All of the ones so I'm here in the US and I'm saying, no, before you buy it, I want to see it. All of the things that they're showing me are so Eurocentric. Q is for queen and it's got a picture of a white woman. D is for doctor. It's got a picture of a white person as a doctor.
Yeah.
And this is in Nigeria. We had to create our own, like I had to commission someone to go, okay, for the alphabets and for the animals And then they would come up with these animals that did not exist in Africa. And I'm like, wait a second. We have animals with these names that live in Africa. Why are we coming up with, and I'm not saying we don't want to expose our children to animals that live outside of Africa, but let's start with things that they can relate to first.
Correct.
But that was even a struggle for the people I was working with. So I say all of that to say representation absolutely matters. We don't need to wait for the UN. Our own schools, our own countries can make that decision to say, this is a map that fairly represents us. We are going to start implementing them in our own countries, on our own our pamphlets, with our own curriculum. And yes, you can still take that up to the UN, but nothing stops you from implementing it with your own curriculum. And while we're doing that, go back and reclaim your names with everything. No more Victoria Falls. Just like Ghana left Gold Coast, why are we still having Ivory Coast? Why do we still have Port Harcourt? Why do we still... No, go back and claim your names in all the different ways. Why do we still have Cyril as the president of our country? Even Kwame Nkrumah had the sense to change from Francis back to Kwame. So it is 2026. In every way, let us reclaim our representation. And we do not need to go to the UN to get permission for that.
Comrade.
All right. So to me, that struck me the most. And okay, fine, Togo, because you need a country to bring it before the UN. But I think the story gives Togo too much credit. I think this private initiative by this organization.
Speak Up Africa.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
They should have the preponderance of the credit.
Yes.
Fire and DIA should be in the lead, right? But this is the kind of private individual initiative that we need to promote and encourage throughout Africa. So Togo introduced it there. At the same time, I don't hear Togo or any other African countries pushing for a borderless Africa, pushing for a United States of Africa. Something like this, it only has benefits. You get the kudos, but it's not that. It's very important. But why do you stop there then? That if you care so much about this big Africa, which of course needs to get its just dues, and because it affects perception, of course.
Sure.
China, even before it became a power, the size of China alone, it affected the perception that people had of China. Same thing with India, another emerging power. So of course, like China and India, Africa should get its just dues as well in terms of the dimension. And why are we still talking about projection, Mercator or Phillips, when we can have the accurate, precise dimension from outer space now? So why are we even still referring to a Phillips, projection? We don't need projection because we know the actuals now. So to me, the biggest thing here is and of course it won't come from these leaderships because it would involve sacrificing their own
positions.
Role. Everybody wants to be a president in a small pond. So they want this big lake, but they still want to have all these small ponds, right? Within that big lake. It's the biggest irony of this story.
And we definitely saw Nnamdi Azikiwe champion just that ideology. I would say this, to the extent that we've been doing Women in Resistance for, half a year, it feels like?
Yeah, 1 year plus now.
1 year plus now, wow. To the extent that this initiative is also headed by a woman, we can't give her too much credit. I was surprised they even mentioned her name in the article.
Well, okay. So is that your final take on the story? So kudos to Speak Up Africa. And like the good comrade said, we now have satellites. We don't need lines on a map anymore. So we coming to the end of the program, and if you do find value, do like, share, subscribe, and do all the good stuff. Thank you, Miss June, for the super chats. And we go to the last story, and it's one that sister will probably enjoy, and it's from New York Times, which I know the good comrade has fond memories of.
I actually do.
So this last story comes from the New York Times, and it is titled Cynthia Shange, who defied apartheid at a beauty pageant, dies at the age of 76. She was the first Black South African to enter Miss World contest, placing in the top 5 in 1972. And let's give her flowers. There she is, turning them. for me, key part of the story is this, and then I'll allow your take. Cynthia Shange, who was at the height of apartheid, was the first Black woman from South Africa to compete in Miss World Beauty pageant. In the top 5 at 1972, as becoming an enduring symbol of glamour and resistance, died on April 20 in KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa, was 76. She well understood the reverberation of her participation in Miss World when she arrived at the Royal Albert Hall in London, where the contest was held in December 1972. Shange, then 23, raised her fist in the air in a Black Power salute. She later said, even so, the moment was bittersweet. South Africa's official Miss World contest that year was Miss Stephanie Renke, who was white and blonde. Shange was in London representing African South, a country that did not exist, she told the Times of London in a 2010 interview. The last part is this. There she is. And where is it? Yeah. But returning to a rigidly segregated South Africa was a stark letdown. She traveled across the country for a modeling work. She said in a 2010 interview, she had to stop at roadhouses to eat and ask for food through the back door. One final piece, and it's here. At the height of apartheid, the statement read, this is the statement issued by the Parliament. When Black people were excluded from mainstream recognition and representation, Shange's presence on that stage asserted beauty, worth, and humanity of Black women in a society that sought to erase them. So let's go first to the sister.
Let's go to Comrade first.
We'll go first to you in light of the fact that you do Women and Resistance. You've now been doing that for a year and some months. And so you get first take.
Me? Yeah, I'm trying to give it over to Comrade first.
No, I mean, I only have a few words anyway. So
yes, okay, please go.
So I'm just happy to see she lived long enough to see apartheid South Africa replaced with neo-apartheid South Africa, which is slightly better than apartheid South Africa. So she lived to see that era. She did not die before the official demise of apartheid South Africa. Beyond that, I would like to say that one of the most enduring damages that the apartheid state and system did to Africans in South Africa is actually in a way similar to what was also done in this country to our sisters and brothers. But in South Africa, it was much more intense. So that even today in South Africa, I'm not sure they would embrace a standard of beauty as a person look like Lupita Nyong'o. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
South Africa and many African countries, by the way, still a long way from there. Because in South Africa, and I think we discussed this several episodes ago, they had what was called, we discussed it in fact very recently, the population register. Remember I was saying sister, brown skin could actually argue that, she's not Black, she's colored, or in fact, she could actually make a claim that she's white. The incentive was, yes, come as close as possible to white, you see? So that damage was very deep-seated, and that damage is still very intense in South Africa, but in many African countries as well. So that's all I want to say about this particular story.
Okay. So, sister?
May her brave soul rest in peace and rise in power, because I cannot even imagine what that experience felt like to be in those spaces in that time. Having said that, I echo everything that Comrade has already said. Glad that she lived long enough, that she had a farm. She was, according to the article, she was able to go and breathe. She talked about leaving the country when she went for the Miss World pageant and being treated like a human being, being able to eat, and just that process of like actually rediscovering your own humanity. And that just brought tears to my eyes. So having said that, let me just officially say this. Even though I at one point had been in a beauty pageant myself, I am categorically opposed to those pieces of crap because it just buys into this patriarchal system of objectifying women and diminishing who we are. And you are a thing of enjoyment for someone else, fetishizing. You hear that, again, this idiot felon-in-chief, adjudicated sexual offender in the White House talking about, Well, because I was sponsoring the pageant, I would go and watch these girls in various states of undress, and nobody could stop me. And you're just something to be used. And then to the extent that even with social media now, so many young women are taking their sense of worth from how they look. You know, the Michael Jackson story just came out, and we're seeing how his father's words to him about how he looked, his nose, how that impacted not just Michael, but almost every member of his family who went on to get their noses done, including his father. You know, so these issues of beauty and how we are supposed to present ourselves and how that ties into our humanity are deeply troubling to me. I'm glad that that was something that she was able to use at that point as her ticket out, and she became an actress, and she told many of our own stories. I hope that moving forward, that we no longer find a need to participate in our own objectification, in our own dehumanization for the benefit of less evolved people, quite frankly. Yeah.
Okay. And so with that story, we've come to the end of this week's episode of African News Review. The 4 stories we've brought to you have highlighted the fact that Africa does have agency. Unfortunately, we choose not to exercise it. And so we continue the work next week. And final thoughts, Comrade Milton?
Well, as I say all the time, support this platform so that we can continue to expand, bring you more analysis, critique, and evaluations on a weekly basis. A luta continua.
And Sister?
Thank you for the work you continue to do and for bringing our awareness to these stories week in and week out.
And to the audience, thank you for joining us week in, week out. And so until next week, it's good night and God bless. That's a wrap for this week on the African News Review podcast. We hope you are leaving with a clearer, more truthful picture of Africa. Remember, every story has another side, and we're here to uncover it. Don't forget to join us next Sunday at 12 p.m. Eastern as we continue to challenge the narratives and reclaim Africa's voice. If you've enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe, share, and leave us a review. Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep seeing Africa for what it truly is.